Hello and welcome to another special package of the program from the National Assembly as part of our series of engagements with members of the 10th Senate as they celebrate 3 years after inauguration. I'm Lani Ali. On today's episode of the program, we have as our guest the Senator from Jigawa State, Senator Babangida Hussaini. He chairs the Committee on Northwest Development Commission. Distinguished, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, the Senate recently clocked 3 years since inauguration, and it has just a year to wrap up its activities. As a member of the 10th Senate, what should be the priority area for members of the Red Chamber now that they have just a year to go?
Yes, significantly, the Senate was this 10th Senate was inaugurated on the 13th of June 2023 after the 2023 general elections, which ushered the new leadership and the new administration as well. Maybe it is good to put the whole question in context, and the context is that we have to look back to see what it was before the journey began and what it is today, and then we can better appreciate what has been done and what has not been done. After the inauguration of the 10th Senate, I recall that the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration had introduced some very far-reaching economic measures, namely the reforms in the forex, in the foreign exchange market, where the naira is allowed to float and to find its own economic level. And then again, of course, the abolition of the very obnoxious subsidy regime, which was quite a very bold and radical move to free up the economy and to provide some leeway for the development of local refining capacity, and also to ensure that the racketeering associated with the subsidy regime is abolished. Those two twin policies have actually impacted seriously on the Nigerian nation in general. Of course, let me quote Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who said that like the pain of childbirth, they will come to pass, and the gains and the benefit will cascade down in a short while. So that was the circumstance under which the 10th Senate was inaugurated. We have had to go out of our way to introduce some palliative measures to cushion the effect of the changes that have just been introduced in the economic sphere. At the same time, the various reform initiatives of the administration, of course, came with some pains, but then there is no pain, there is no gain without pain, as they say. So those are the issues that the 10th National Assembly started to grapple with. Of course, as a new member who is just cutting his teeth in legislative practices, I wasn't immune to the challenges that we faced at that time. And good enough, we were able to overcome them, and we're beginning to see the silver lining in the horizon. We're beginning to see the benefits that cut across every sector of the economy. The naira has stabilized. The fuel-dependent, subsidy-dependent economy is now history. We're beginning to see some improvement in the local refining capacity, the Dangote refinery, and a lot of modular refineries that are coming up around the southern corridor. So most of these things are as a result of the additional funding that came the way of the government, the ramping up of the infrastructure, the coastal road, the Sokoto-Badagry highway, the continuation of the Abuja-Kano road, and the continuation of various road projects across the country are quite commendable, and those are the benefits. Of course, along with that comes with pains, which of course the National Assembly has to deal with and enact various laws to deal with them. So fundamentally, this is just the background of what it was and what it is today.
The two chambers of the National Assembly, that is the Senate and the House of Representatives, have over time been supportive of the executive in terms of reforms initiative with regards to the economy and improving security. But members of the public are saying that that support is yet to cascade for us to see a reasonable impact. What can you say about this thinking in the public space?
Well, I get the drift of the question. Now, let me just say this. In 2023, early part of this administration, headline inflation was around 34%. Food inflation was hovering around 38, 39%. Today, headline inflation is around 15.5, 15.6% as at the month of April, going by the statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics. So you can see the huge difference in reducing and closing the inflationary trend that was then, of course, if I may put it in elementary way, the galloping inflation at that time. One. Secondly, again, remember the cost of food at that time. Headline food inflation was quite, astronomical and quite unbearable for Nigerians. Today, the cost of food has come down. Yes, I will agree with you that yes, the pain and the gains have not been as far-reaching as we will expect, and I believe government is working on that. But let me just say that perhaps one of the areas, speaking as a member of the National Assembly and somebody who's passionate about social issues, I think what we'll probably have to look at is to expand the social safety net so that the weak and the vulnerable, more weak and vulnerable members of the societies will be accommodated and will be taken care of. I think that for me is where the relief and the reduction in the quantum of poverty and the difficulties will come from. But of course, governance and then looking at the trajectory of the national economy, I think we are good to go. Government is gradually stabilizing, things are coming down, and we have succeeded in, it's an import-dependent economy, which practically depends on everything. We have been able to stabilize the value of the naira, and despite the legacy issues this administration inherited over the years, the administration before it and the administration, former administrations, they have been able to address some of these challenges and have been bold to take these issues head on. I quite commend the tenacity of the Mr. President and the economic management team. We will not forget in a hurry the issues that surrounded the management and the management of the fiscal institutions, the monetary institutions, if you like, the CBN and all of those matters around it. Today, those are history. We have been able to overcome them. The issue of the, the management of the national treasury has been streamlined and things are gradually stabilizing. So also is the reforms in the banking sector. The banking sector gradually now are beginning to have a more stable banking industry, which is a very key requirement to national development. So a host of issues that perhaps we may probably gloss them over, but they are quite fundamental, and I believe they will outlive this administration going forward.
One sector that the federal government has paid much attention to is improving education. And but when we look at statistics, we see that the northern part of the country is still falling far behind. What can be done differently to improve the situation?
Education is a concurrent responsibility between the national and the subnationals. There is supposed to be harmony and synergy in terms of policy formulation and policy implementation. So I believe it is a thing of concern, the out-of-school boy syndrome, the issues around access, equity and quality of education up north. Yes, I agree with you. There's a lot more needs to be done, but then the most fundamental issue that perhaps even predates this and maybe could have a far-reaching effect on education is the issue of insecurity. where you have, students abducted, schools attacked, the general insecurity, most particularly in parts of the northeast, and then parts of the northwest. You are looking at UB, Borno, and then of course you look at Zamfara, Katsina, Kaduna, Kebbi, and Sokoto, and even parts of Kwara State. You will begin to see that this has affected enrollment and retention of students in school. Parents are now beginning to say that, look, I would rather my child stays at home than to go to school and be abducted and be dehumanized. So, but I think the initiative that is now being put in place and the seeming improvement in terms of the collaborative relationship between the national and the subnational is the solution to this problem. It's a legacy problem that this administration inherited, and much more needs to be done. Part of the resolution passed by the Senate this week is about civic education and civic engagement, where you have communities volunteering information to outlaws and bandits, disclosing the presence or absence of some potential victims for kidnapping. It's not good for the nation, and I think much more needs to be done by our clergy, the churches and the mosques, to draw attention to the fact that, look, this is an ungodly act that should be discouraged, especially our young ones that are coming up that are, recruited as informants and other social vices. So I quite agree with you. A lot more needs to be done, and it should be a collaborative relation. But let me also say here that government has taken some very decisive and very encouraging measures in terms of the new initiatives like the NEL Fund, the loan fund, which is a baby of this administration. NEL Fund is doing very well. I've seen a lot of improvement in terms of supporting financing for students to go to school at the tertiary level. But I think the larger problem lies at the basic level, the primary and the junior secondary school, and I think we need to do more in that regard.
Education falls within the purview of both the state governments, the federal governments, as well as the local governments. How can we have a paradigm shift? That is, how can stakeholders be innovative by thinking out of the box so that we can have better improvements and address the situations as they arise, or address the situation as it were?
Of course, let me admit that I am an active player in the educational sector, having served in various capacities at the subnational. I was the pioneer chairman of SUBEB in my state. I was Permanent Minister for Basic Education in those days. I think, rightly so, that we need to think out of the box. And there are various measures and initiatives to actually address the issue of education in the North. Beyond of course, the issues around access, the issues of girls' education, the issues of Almajiri syndrome, the issues of... I think what we probably do, I will probably recommend three very broad and fundamental measures. The first one is active engagement and participation of the traditional institutions in advocating for education and enrollment and retention. Secondly, the provision of alternative means of delivering lectures, education, as the case may be. In those days, we had thought of the idea of e-learning, which at that time, it hadn't gained traction. But I think the time has come now for us to really, really deepen e-learning. Broadband access is very important. If we have broadband access in most part of the country, at least we can even, like as a policy measure, see that, okay, at the level of tertiary education, we are looking at least in the next 5 years, abolish class lectures or reduce it by, let's say, 60%. That class-based lectures should be abolished by 60%. 60% will be online, 40% will be, the traditional and regular class-based lectures. So if we deepen e-learning, expand the frontier of knowledge, that will also help in reducing the over-dependence and also the cost of constructing classrooms, furniture and infrastructure. You will probably spend less by way of providing access for learning and development by applying e-learning. Thirdly, and most importantly, is the issue of deepening collaboration. I'm not an advocate of the UBEC funding system. I say so because some states hardly have the funding to match up the federal government grant to access the UBEC fund. I will rather think if states should be encouraged to be taking, for instance, promissory notes from the DMO, instead of giving cash, they can pay by promissory notes, and then government can now release the matching grant to them. I think that will easen up and make it more viable for states to accept the UBEC funds. Because as I speak with you, some states are in arrears of maybe 1-2 years. Despite the increase in funding at the subnational, some of them find it difficult to access the funds of UBEC. And the greater part of the problem is at the basic education level. So I think these are some of the innovations, but significantly it's about deepening engagement with traditional institutions, because in those days, I remember when I was small, a lot of collaborative relationship exists between, most particularly in the north, the Mengwa ward head, the district head, and the emir. Their number one responsibility is, you see them more active and vibrant during enrollment. Emirs go out of their way to go and sensitize their soldiers, always take their children to school, and then provide them the opportunity for them to go to school. In some instances, some emirs even go out of their way to sew school uniform and give some incentives for children to go to school. So this, I think, should be reintroduced and deepened and strengthened.
Insecurity is a major factor that is dragging Nigeria back in terms of developments. You have served as a permanent secretary with the Ministry of Defense. Do you think that members of the armed forces and other members of other security agencies in Nigeria are motivated enough to confront the problem?
Truly speaking, the remuneration package of our armed services should be enhanced, must be enhanced for them to do more. They need to be motivated. I look at it beyond the financial packages involved. Go to the barracks, see the squalor, see the level of poverty that you see in our barracks and all of that. So I think beyond that, beyond even enhancing their salaries and allowances, their living conditions, insurances, a lot of opportunities for training and retraining, constant and frequent opportunities for their families, a scholarship for their children. These are all non-financial incentives that will motivate them to do more. But beyond that, you see, we are looking at legacy issues that have predated many administrations. Old and outdated platforms that perhaps don't even exist now. It is quite worrisome. The report out there that some of the criminal elements have even far more sophisticated equipments than even our armed services. So we appreciate the sacrifice of the armed forces and what they are doing to safeguard us. But I think government has to ramp up the production and the procurement and deployment of modern armaments. And then, of course, technology has made security management easier. UAVs can actually do part of the job for surveillance, and even there are armed drones that can deploy. So I think it is not even about the welfare, but beyond the welfare, we need to ramp up and change most of the old platforms that we have on ground, and where we have difficulty in even replacing their parts. I remember we have some arms, some jets that we were not even the company is not even producing. And sadly, we can't procure their parts at that time. So really, it is about overhauling the sector entirely. I'm not an advocate of security audit and all of that as they see, but I'm an advocate of overhauling our platforms, redeveloping them and ramping them up, and then making sure that at least we operate at par with the demands of the time.
All right, unemployment is also another factor that is fueling criminality in the country, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent and indeed other parts of advanced societies. We here in Nigeria, we have situations where you have graduates with very good results, yet they don't have work to do. So, how do we get out of this challenge?
The key is life education, skills development, skilling, reskilling. You see, part of the concerns that I have done some evaluation of some tertiary institutions, and you will discover that some of their curricula don't even match the demands of the time. Not only that, you find that some courses right now being offered have really no place in the modern society, in the modern world. So we have to, side by side, the academic work, we train our children at tertiary institutions. We must also support them with life education, give them give them skills, train them to be employers of labor and not employees. I think that will help, and I'm happy I've seen a range of programs that are in place, but more needs to be done. It's quite disheartening for students when they finish school, they are roaming the street with their certificates and there is no job for them to have. And I think government needs to look in that direction. Technical and vocational education is the key. We will have, with the huge population we have, the market is there for production of small and medium enterprises. I mean, the operation of small and medium enterprises, which will help in reducing dependence on white collar jobs. I think that for me is the key. But we are also mindful of one very unfortunate circumstance we are facing now, the issue of drug and substance abuse, which is ravaging our youth. Our youthful population, young, energetic, are being destroyed by drug and substance abuse, and I think that too should be looked into. In fact, it is what is fueling violent crimes, vandalization of public utilities, and a lot of social vices that come along with that. So our youth have to be sensitized to embrace the idea of skill development, skill acquisition, and the mindset to be entrepreneurs and to be employers of labor, and not employees.
Aside sensitization, which you have suggested, what can we do to deal with drug trafficking, since it is one of the problems that is pushing criminality in Nigeria and across the world?
Well, sadly, I've made this point during the budget defense for 2026. The lead agency that is charged with the constitutional responsibility to deal with this matter is heavily understaffed, under-equipped, underfunded, and I think that is not good enough. I have expressed that concern during the budget defense, and I will still maintain that NDLEA needs to be properly funded and supported. That, for me, is the answer. Because what will interest you today is that Nigeria is no more a transit point in the global trade world, global drug trade world, but it is now a production center. You have seen some very interesting developments in that regard. Recently, some the Thailand or Malaysians were arrested here in Nigeria, producing very dangerous and harmful substances here in Nigeria. You have seen a lot of cannabis farms all over the place springing up. Now we are even producing. And then sadly, in the hinterland, in the various communities, I've seen instances where very dangerous substances are compounded to produce a very disturbing, deadly drug, which our youth are taking. I would be losing our children to this very unfortunate circumstance. And I think a lot more needs to be done, not only by government, but by parents, by community leaders, by the churches, by the mosques. We need to keep on telling our youth to know the dangers of drug and substance abuse, because it is eating into the society. In fact, it has cascaded down to the family level. And that is why the first motion I laid as a member of the Nigerian National Senate was about the need to declare a state of emergency on drug and substance abuse. And I think I still maintain that that ought to be done, and that has to be done.
The three mandates of the legislature as captured constitutionally is representation, lawmaking, and oversight. Would you say that the Senate is doing enough in terms of oversighting MDAs for good governance?
Well, at the risk of sounding and blowing our own trumpet, I think in the circumstances we find ourselves, we've been doing more. We've been doing our best. Now remember, Nigeria, the total landmass, you are looking at a country of almost 927,000 square kilometers. And with the population projected to be around 250 million, 250 million population. And then a lot of social problems, social issues that have been inherited and have been accumulating over the years. So having said that, the need to ramp up our infrastructure is quite a call to be made. Even the federal highways, A1, A2, A3, A4 that we have, some have been were actually constructed during the first and second National Development Plan, 1970 to 1974, 1974 to 1976, 78. They've been there. They have outlived their usefulness, and they have actually, they have technically died. Now, to actually even maintain and to make sure that they are quite serviceable has been a nightmare for all administrations. Now, enter into the fray the issue of insecurity. The A1 that should take from Apapa, come through Ilorin, Oyo, Ilorin, down to Ilela, and then branching through Kagara, Makira, up to Kwantaguru, and Kagara to Kaduna. Insecurity has taken over that road. The Kwantagora-Malamfashi highway is also practically not safe to travel now, except now that the various initiatives of the Kaduna State government has done much in assuaging and reducing the impact of the insecurity. So the whole traffic coming from north-south, south-north have always used the A2, that is cutting through Kogi, down through Abuja, Kaduna to Kano. The weight and the quantum of and the volume of traffic on that road is quite worrisome, and that's why the deterioration is always regular and constant. So A3, A4, which of course cuts through Benue down to Maiduguri, and then through Calabar, Adamawa down to Maiduguri, they are practically, they've been on the drawing board for quite some time. We are practically not utilizing them as we should. So in all of this, I think one area we neglected is the railway. With the rail system in place, we will be able to be moving goods, heavy goods, both sides of the nation, north, south, south, north, saving our roads. Our bridges are overburdened. Recently, I think I've seen a lot of disturbing reports in respect of the structural condition of our bridges, most especially the bearings, which are very critical to the sustenance and the maintenance of bridges. So I think a lot more needs to be done. But then, of course, the issue of funding comes in. We operate a budget that, with the global economic situation, we are hardly able to implement fully. And then, of course, with the difficulties in terms of the foreign exchange that is available for the national economy, it's quite worrisome. And therefore, the only thing we can do is to manage what we have, the little resources we have. But really, much more needs to be done in terms of ramping up our infrastructure. Because if we don't open the hinterland, create new roads, maintain existing ones, then of course the difficulties will continue.
Now, as a lawmaker, how would you expect your colleagues to tackle the issue of sensitizing members of the public on the role of the legislature, being that they not only see members of the National Assembly and indeed those at the state level as a rubber stamp, and they also expect that you go out of your constitutional functions by embarking on projects for development. What is your opinion with regards to this line of thinking?
It is a difficult task. It is a mindset. Constitutionally, the responsibility of the legislature are basically three: lawmaking, appropriation, and oversight. Now, part of the issues I think around the so-called domiciliation